Hello, and welcome back to True Life Knowledge, the YouTube channel where we study the most important knowledge for life. Today we're going to read Rhetoric from Aristotle. I guess that you already probably know who Aristotle is, so without further ado, let us start with Book 1. So, Rhetoric is the counterpart of dialectic. Both alike are concerned with such things as come, more or less, within the general ken of all men and belong to no definite science. Accordingly, all men make use more or less of both, for to a certain extent all men attempt to discuss statements and to maintain them, to defend themselves and to attack others. Ordinary people do this either at random or through practice and from acquired habit. Both ways being possible, the subject can plainly be handled systematically, for it is possible to inquire the reason why some speakers succeed through practice and others spontaneously, and everyone will at once agree that such an inquiry is the function of an art. So Aristotle is telling us that every one of us is using rhetoric or persuasion in our life, and some people get it, some people don't, but in the end we can learn it, and because it is a skill, but then in the end he tells us that it's an art. So an art form that can be learned, but it's not a mechanical art. Now, the framers of the current treatise on rhetoric have constructed but a small portion of that art. The modes of persuasion are the only true constituents of the art, so everything else is merely accessory. These writers, however, say nothing about antonyms, which are the substance of rhetorical persuasion, but deal mainly with non-essentials. The arousing of prejudice, pity, anger, and similar emotions has nothing to do with the essentials facts, but is merely a personal appeal to the man who is judging the case. Consequently, if the rules for trials, which are now laid down in some states, especially in well-governed states, were applied everywhere, such people would have nothing to say. All men, no doubt, think that the laws should prescribe such rules, but some, as in the court of Areopagus, give practical effect to their thoughts and forbid talk about non-essentials. This is sound law and custom. It is not right to pervert the judge by moving him to anger or envy or pity. One might as well warp a carpenter's rule before using it. Again, the litigant has clearly nothing to do but to show that the alleged fact is so or is not so, that it has or has not happened. So here Aristotle is making a case for a policy that the courts should judge not by rhetoric or rhetoric appeal, but by other things such as what is true and what is not true. As to whether a thing is important or unimportant, just or unjust, the judge must surely refuse to take his instructions from the litigant. He, the judge, must decide for himself all such points as the lawgiver has not already defined for him. Now, it is of great moment that well-drawn laws should themselves define all the points they possibly can and leave as few as may be to the decision of the judges, and this for several reasons. First, to find one man or a few men who are sensible persons and capable of legislating and administering justice is easier than to find a large number. Next, laws are made after long consideration, whereas decisions in the courts are given at short notice, which makes it hard for those who try the case to satisfy the claims of justice and expediency. The weightiest reason for all this that the decision of the lawgiver is not particular but prospective and general, whereas members of the assembly and the jury find it their duty to decide on definite cases brought before them. They will often have allowed themselves to be so much influenced by feelings of friendship or hatred, or self-interest that they lose any clear vision of the truth and have their judgment obscured by considerations of personal pleasure or pain. In general, then, the judge should be allowed to decide as few things as possible, but questions as to whether something has happened or has not happened, will be or will be not, is or is not, must of necessity be left to the judge, since the lawgiver cannot foresee them. If this is so, it is evident that anyone who lays down rules about their matters, such as what must be the contents of the introduction or the narration or any of the other divisions of a speech, is theorizing about non-essentials as if they belong to the art. The only question with which these writers here deal is how to put the judge into a given frame of mind. About the orator's proper modes of persuasion, they have nothing to tell us, nothing that is about how to gain skill in antonyms. Hence, it comes that, although the same systematic principles apply to political as to forensic oratory, and although the former is a nobler business and fitter for a citizen than that which concerns the relations of private individuals, these authors say nothing about political oratory, but try, one and all, to write treatises on the way to plead in court. The reason for this is that in political oratory there is less inducement to talk about non-essentials, so political oratory is less given to unscrupulous practices than forensic, but treats of wider issues. In a political debate, the man who is forming a judgment is making a decision about his own vital interests. There is no need, therefore, to prove anything except that the facts are what the supporters of a measure maintains they are. In forensic oratory, this is not enough. To conciliate the listener is what pays here. It is other people's affairs that are to be decided, so that the judges, intent on their own satisfaction and listening with partiality, surrender themselves to the disputants instead of judging in them. Hence, in many places, as we have said already, irrelevant speaking is forbidden in the law courts. In the public assembly, those who have to form a judgment are themselves well able to guard against that. It is clear, then, that the technical study of rhetoric is concerned with the modes of persuasion. Now, persuasion is a sort of demonstration. So, since we are most fully persuaded when we consider things to have been demonstrated. The orator's demonstration is an antinomy, and this is in general the most effective of the modes of persuasion. So Aristotle is saying that antonyms, so emotional appeals, are the most effective modes of persuasion. The antonym is a sort of deduction. So the consideration of deductions of all kinds without distinction is the business of dialectic, either of dialectic as a whole or one of its branches. Clearly then, he who is best able to see how and from what elements a deduction is produced will also be best skilled in the antonym when he has further learned what its subject matter is and in what respects it differs from the deduction of logic. For the true and approximately true are apprehended by the same faculty. It may also be noted that men have a sufficient natural instinct for what is true and usually do arrive at the truth. Hence the man who makes a good guess at truth is likely to make a good guess at what is reputable.